few days ago, we saw there's this story came up about the Women's March Pledge of Liberation. Now, some of you may remember the women's marches that took place shortly after President Trump was inaugurated. And it was in response to President Trump's alleged bad record as it relates to women. And, you know, obviously, I mean, President Trump has said and done some things as it relates to women that were kind of creepy. They had that video from 10 years ago where he was saying really inappropriate stuff. And, you know, he's appeared in Playboy and done a lot of things that I wouldn't do and that I'm not crazy about. But the thing that sort of struck me about those marches is they were talking about that all his policies are anti-woman. And that I wasn't exactly sure what that meant. But more and more as I was watching these women's marches, what I was seeing more and more based on the way in which they were treating any woman who happened to be pro-life is that by, quote, anti-woman policies, what they meant was policies that were in opposition to abortion, in opposition to abortion rights. And I saw a few days ago, from the Twitter account of NARAL, Pro-Choice America. Now, NARAL is one of the biggest abortion advocacy entities in the country. In Sacramento, especially, you know, we talk about the special interests in politics, and the special interests, they're so bad, they're so evil, and we think of special interests as being, you know, these businessmen in their business suits and these big businesses, and they're just evil, and they're, you know, oil tycoons or hedge fund guys, and they're just evil people. Well, in California, the special interests are the abortion industry, including NARAL, and the labor unions. And NARAL is a very powerful special interest. Let's not kid ourselves and think they're anything else. So NARAL was promoting this thing from the organizers of the Women's March, the Women's March Pledge of Liberation. And it appears to be like almost like a kind of manifesto, like a poorly written manifesto of different things that the organizers of the Women's March are advocating. And this is sort of in conjunction, seemingly, with the more radical elements of the Democratic Party, which is more and more just sort of becoming the Democratic Party's base, their sort of core principled beliefs. So I talked about this a few days ago when I was on Jim Franklin. I was filling in for Jim Franklin on Tuesday, for those of you listening via radio. For those of you in podcast land, Jim Franklin is one of our local radio hosts here in Fresno, here on AM 1680 The Answer, and he lets me and some other friends help fill in for him. But let me read this statement because I think it reveals something about the nature of the modern-day left and the modern-day pro-choice movement. Okay, so they have a lot of different sections in this sort of manifesto, this Women's March Pledge of Liberation. And let's get to the section on reproductive rights and justice. Okay, so this statement says, and this is a statement NARAL is joined on with, this is a statement that most of these women's march organizers have put forward. We believe in reproductive freedom. We do not accept any federal, state, or local rollbacks, cuts, or restrictions on our ability to access quality reproductive health care services, birth control, HIV/AIDS care and prevention, or medically accurate sexuality education. Okay. And we see this word access. Let's note that word as I continue to read. As such, we demand open access, there it is again, to safe, legal, affordable abortion and birth control for all people, regardless of income, location, or education. Now, this is me cutting in again. That word access, we've talked about this before on Right to Life Radio, that basically access is the new buzzword of the modern day left as it relates to abortion. It's now no longer good enough that abortion is legal. Now everyone has to be able to have access to it. And how do you get access to it if you don't have the money to pay for abortion? Well, someone else pays for it. And that someone else is generally the government paying for it with your taxpayer dollars. meaning you have to be involved in abortion. Another way to access it is by forcing pro-life healthcare providers to do abortions when they don't want to do it, so that everyone has, again, quote, access to abortion. At any rate, let me continue here. We demand the reshaping of the reproductive justice discussion to value both a woman's right to choose and to destigmatize disability. I'm not sure what that means. We believe in fighting for full reproductive justice, from a woman's right to make decisions about her own body to the ability to have and raise a child in a safe and clean environment, free from police violence and gun violence. Okay, and then it goes on to some nonsense about the sort of unrelated things about police brutality and gun violence and everything. Now, what makes this interesting, I've been reading lately some stuff about the old Soviet Union. I read a book by Alexander Solzhenitsyn called The Gulag Archipelago, which was, I believe it was awarded the Pulitzer Prize or the Nobel Prize, or some international literary prizes for its work basically revealing what the Soviet Union was doing in terms of imprisoning any kind of political dissent, any kind of political dissenters, and sending masses of people, whole populations of people, to their gulags, which was basically their system of concentration camps that were located throughout Siberia. They had just tons of these prison camps that were absolutely awful, where they were sending people. And one of the things he was highlighting about the Soviet system and socialism in general is that it wasn't enough in socialism for people to have rights. They needed to have those rights be actualized. So in the case of the socialists believed that everyone had a right to work, so they combated the problem of unemployment by having the government take over every single industry in the country and outlawing unemployment. So everyone had a job because the government basically took over every single industry, and every single job was a government job. And so the government just artificially made everyone employed, which led to obviously disastrous economic consequences. What the left is doing today as it relates to abortion rights is something actually very similar to that socialist, that Soviet concept. Your right to abortion, they believe, is meaningless unless you can actually actualize it. And how are they going to do that? Well, by giving everyone the means to have an abortion. And how are they doing that? Well, here in California, they're doing it in a couple of ways. First, by having state regulators require that every insurance plan sold in this state has to cover abortion. By having Medi-Cal pay for abortions for all Medi-Cal beneficiaries. But even though the federal government will not pay for abortions through the federal Medicaid money, California will set up a separate stream of purely California dollars through the Medi-Cal system to pay for abortions. They're continuing to expand access to abortion for Medi-Cal beneficiaries. They're filing lawsuits. The ACLU is filing lawsuits in California against Catholic hospitals and other religious hospitals that don't do abortions and don't want to do abortions, basically saying it should be illegal for them not to provide access to abortions. They're even fighting to get rid of conscience protections for doctors and nurses who don't want to do abortions. This is the modern day left. They want basically to remove any kind of obstacle for anyone to have abortion, and to have every abortion be it's not safe, legal, and rare abortion anymore. It's safe, legal, and accessible for everyone to have access to abortion, for everyone to have their abortion paid for by you, to involve you in this decision. It's a scary world we're seeing.